It was a crisp autumn evening when Emily Carter, a 23-year-old college graduate with dreams of becoming a writer, walked into the grand yet slightly decrepit lobby of the Ashwood Inn. The hotel had seen better days. Its once elegant chandeliers were now dimmed by dust, and the faded wallpaper peeled at the edges. But for Emily, it was her first real job as a receptionist, and she couldn't wait to start. The owner, Mr. Grayson, greeted her warmly, but carried an air of unease about him. His eyes darted around nervously as he handed her the employee manual. "Welcome aboard," he said, his voice strained. "Just remember, customer satisfaction is everything here. Anything unusual, you report directly to me." Emily nodded, eager to prove herself. Little did she know how much those words would haunt her in the coming weeks. On her third night at work, a young couple checked in just before midnight. They seemed ordinary enough, a handsome man in his late 20s and a woman with soft brown curls who smiled shyly as they signed the register. Emily assigned them room 14, one of the larger suites on the second floor. But something felt off from the moment they stepped into the elevator. Their laughter echoed unnaturally loud, almost forced, as if they were trying too hard to mask their discomfort. Still, Emily dismissed it as nerves or fatigue from traveling. By morning, however, panic set in. The couple hadn't come down for breakfast, nor had they answered repeated knocks on their door. When housekeeping finally entered room 14, they found it empty, not just of people, but eerily untouched. The bed hadn't been slept in. Their luggage sat neatly stacked by the dresser, unopened. It was as though no one had ever been there. Mr. Grayson immediately reviewed the security footage. What they saw chilled everyone to the bone. The couple could clearly be seen walking through the back entrance of the hotel, laughing softly as they made their way upstairs. But once inside room 14, nothing. No movement. No sign of them leaving. Just silence. When questioned, the staff whispered among themselves, terrified. One maid claimed she'd heard faint whispers coming from room 14 during her rounds the previous night. Another swore she saw shadows moving behind the curtains, even though the room was supposed to be vacant. That's when Mr. Grayson gathered the entire team in the basement lounge. His face was pale, his hands trembling as he spoke. "Listen carefully," he began, his voice low and urgent. "This stays within these walls. If word gets out, this place will close down overnight. And trust me, none of us can afford that." He went on to explain that he was drowning in debt, barely keeping the hotel afloat. A scandal like this would ruin him and leave all of them unemployed. He pleaded with the staff to keep quiet, promising bonuses if they cooperated. Reluctantly, they agreed, though fear lingered in every glance exchanged. Emily tried to shake off the incident, telling herself it was some bizarre misunderstanding. But deep down, she couldn't ignore the gnawing sense of dread that settled in her chest. Exactly 7 days later, history repeated itself. A middle-aged businessman named Robert Klein arrived late in the afternoon. Dressed sharply in a tailored suit, he exuded confidence as he requested a room for the night. Emily hesitated before assigning him room 14. It was technically available after all, but something about handing over that key card made her stomach churn. Robert disappeared the next morning. Again, the room showed no signs of disturbance. His belongings, including his laptop and briefcase, remained exactly where he'd left them. And again, the CCTV footage revealed the same inexplicable pattern. Robert entering room 14 via the hallway, and then vanishing without a trace. This time, the staff was visibly shaken. Whispers turned into hushed arguments. Some demanded answers from Mr. Grayson, while others considered quitting outright. Emily, however, became obsessed with uncovering the truth. She spent hours poring over old records, searching for any mention of room 14 in past complaints or incidents. All she found were cryptic notes scrawled in the margins of guest logs. "Avoid room 14," and "strange noises reported." Her curiosity reached a breaking point one rainy night when she decided to investigate the room herself. Armed with a flashlight and her courage, Emily crept upstairs after her shift ended. The hallways were eerily silent, the only sound being the rhythmic drip of rain against the windows. As she approached room 14, she noticed something odd. The door was slightly ajar, despite having locked it earlier. Pushing it open, she stepped inside. At first glance, everything appeared normal. The furniture was arranged neatly, the bed freshly made. But as she moved deeper into the room, she felt a sudden drop in temperature. Her breath fogged in front of her, and the hairs on her arms stood on end. Then she saw it. A faint crack running along the far wall, barely visible beneath layers of paint. Intrigued, she ran her fingers along the seam, feeling a cold draft seeping through. With growing determination, she pressed harder, and the wall shifted. Behind it lay a hidden passageway, narrow and pitch black. Heart pounding, Emily grabbed her flashlight and ventured inside. The beam illuminated damp stone walls covered in moss, leading downward into what seemed like a forgotten basement. As she descended, the air grew heavier, filled with the scent of earth and decay. Finally, she reached a cavernous chamber lit by flickering torches. In the center stood an ancient wooden altar, stained dark with what looked like dried blood. Surrounding it were symbols carved into the ground, symbols that pulsed faintly with an otherworldly glow. And then she heard it, a low, guttural chanting echoing from the shadows. Peering closer, she saw figures cloaked in black robes, their faces obscured by masks. Among them lay the missing guests, the couple and Robert, all unconscious but alive, bound with thick ropes. Before she could react, a hand clamped over her mouth from behind. She struggled wildly, but it was Mr. Grayson who dragged her back toward the stairs. His expression was wild, his eyes wide with desperation. "You shouldn't have come here," he hissed. "I warned you." "Who are they?" Emily gasped, tears streaming down her face. "What are you doing?" "They're sacrifices," he admitted, his voice breaking. "To save the hotel, to save us all. This place, it's cursed. If we don't appease it, it takes us instead." With that, he shoved her back into the passageway and slammed the hidden door shut, trapping her inside. Alone in the darkness, Emily realized the horrifying truth. The Ashwood Inn wasn't just haunted, it was alive, and it fed on human souls to survive. Days later, authorities discovered Emily's abandoned car parked outside the hotel. Inside, they found her journal detailing the disappearances and her final descent into room 14. Despite extensive searches, neither she nor the missing guests were ever found. As for the Ashwood Inn, it burned to the ground shortly thereafter under mysterious circumstances. Locals claim the land remains cursed, whispering warnings to anyone foolish enough to build there again. But sometimes, on quiet nights, travelers passing by swear they hear faint screams emanating from the ruins, and the faint echo of laughter from a long-lost couple.